The report we are looking at on the screen today came out of a request from the accounting team. They are asking for a list of a report that will show customers who have unpaid invoices. So we have a table for invoices and we also have a table for customers. The invoices table has got the invoice date and the invoice due dates. We'll have a look at this in a second. Before we go into the SQL, a quick accounting refresher. The accounts receivable report will normally show you the money customers owe for products or services that have already been delivered, but for which they haven't paid yet. When you issue an invoice, that amount becomes an account receivable. In other words, an asset on your balance sheet representing cash you would collect later on. An aging report would show these unpaid invoices and by how long. So this exercise today would allow us to group these outstanding invoices by how many days into these various buckets that we have on screen here. That is actually the requirement. So before we go on, the functions that we used in arriving at the report we saw is a function in SQL called the DATEDIFF, and then we also used another one called GETDATE, and then we used a regular case statement. So if you see the requirement, they need us to group these outstanding invoices by how long they've gone past due. So you definitely need a case statement there to say case. If the number of days is that, then label it as that. If it is that, so you need a case statement. And then let's dive in and see what the GETDATE and the DATEDIFF is really doing for us before we go into the SQL. So the DATEDIFF function has this syntax. It has got three parameters. The first one is the date part, and then the start date from whence you want to commence counting, and then the end date. So the DATEDIFF function will always return a number, which will be, remember, you are counting the number of days between two dates. So the DATEDIFF function calculates the difference between two dates or time expressions based on a specified interval. So that specified interval, we're going to see what it means later on. In our case, as we already know, it will be the number of days between two dates, but it can be something else as well. The three parts are the date part, which will be days, week, months, we'll see further, and then your start date from when you want to commence counting till the end date, like you want to know the difference between two dates, the start and end. But there is an example here. This person is trying to calculate the difference between 2024 1st of January to current date. GETDATE is a function that returns the current date of right now as we're speaking. So this would normally give you the number of days that have elapsed between this date and that date. This function will be a crucial part of us getting that report that we saw right now. So before we go on, and again, this documentation is going to be linked in the description section so that you can read further. So the date part can be day, week, month, quarter, year. So under these example returns, in our case, we're just interested in the number of days between when the invoice due date is and today, so that we can have all those groupings that we have up there, so that we can group them according to that. We will be seeing this demo in a second. So one more thing is, remember, the GETDATE gives you the date right now. It's a function in SQL Server that gives you the current date and time right now. It returns a value like that in that format. So in year, month, day, and then how many seconds right now. So it's very crucial for what we want to do. So without wasting much time, let's check in SQL Server. We are going to do a couple of demo before going ahead and create the report. So if we go in here, this is the finished report, but we will cycle back and come back here later. Let us demonstrate what the DATEDIFF returns if you give it a date part of days, weeks, months, or years. In here, these are the intervals. We have put in, today is 17th of February as I'm doing this exercise. So let's see what the DATEDIFF function returns. So if I execute this, we would see that there are 396 days between 2025 January 17th to today. In terms of weeks, it is 57 weeks. In terms of months, it is 12 months. And then between 2025 1st of January to today, in terms of years, it is 1 year. So now we have an idea. So let's see as well the get date. What does it give us? It gives us the time right now as I am doing this exercise is 17th of February 2026, around 1600 hours. So we have all the crucial elements that we need to proceed with our aging or accounts receivable report. Remember, what's the report? We're going to look at an invoice due date against today's date to see how long this person has defaulted according to the requirement. So before we proceed, let us try to familiarize ourselves with the two tables that we need for this exercise. We've got a table of customers. So we have 5 customers who have all got an ID. And then we have another table for invoices. So the invoice has got a primary key, invoice ID, and it has got a foreign key to the customer table called customer ID. So if we run these two queries together, you would be able to see which customer has got which invoice. So this first customer, Apex Industries, has got these 3 invoices here. And if we look on this column, they have paid off one of these. They have fulfilled one of the invoices, but haven't done so for that other invoice, these other invoices here. So these are the targets for the report. So the accounts department wants to know by how many days the due date has been exceeded. So let's go on. We're going to move step by step. So first of all, before we start, progressively we will move until we get to the last part of the report. Let us try to run this query that compares the due date against today's date. So these are the records we are really after. These are the invoices that the due dates have exceeded. So they should have been, they have a date that is less than today's date, which means they should have been paid before today. So these are the records that we are actually after. So then progressively again, let us run this other query, which now introduces the DATEDIFF. So what are we doing here? We are joining the customer table to the invoices table on the basis of the keys that connect them, customer ID. So when we do that, we are able to pull in the invoice ID, the customer name, and these other columns. But then we are introducing a new column with the DATEDIFF function called days overdue. So days overdue is calculated on the interval of days, and then our start date is going to be the invoice due date. The end date will be today's date. So in this way, we are able to produce this. So now we see we are able to calculate by how many days the invoices have exceeded the due date. So if you see this very first one here from Apex Industries, the due date was 2024-12-15, but they haven't, they have actually paid this one. So that's another crucial part of this report. These type of invoices that have been redeemed, we will need to mark them as paid, like as we saw. So for this second one here, there is no paid date, and the due date has been exceeded by 424 days. So if you remember those buckets, we had 90 plus. So this one is a candidate for the 90 plus bucket. If you look at this other one here, let me briefly see the buckets that we have. A bucket for 31 to 60 days, 61 to 90 days. So now it's easy for us to see where each of them will fall. These ones clearly are the 90 plus. So we have these ones 1 to 30. So progressively, now we know what we are doing. We've used this to calculate the days overdue. So the next thing will be us to actually now put the category. We need one more column that will put the buckets and the categories. So how did we do that? It is still the same query that we have up here, but then we have introduced a case statement. A case statement allows you to test a bunch of conditions and then tell the system what action to take when a condition is met and what action to take when it is not met. So if you see, we have got our way of calculating the days overdue. If you see, it is this same function that has been used in all of the conditions here. So we started off by saying, when, of course, we don't want to consider those places like here where there is a paid date. So we started off by saying, when a paid date is not null, which means if there is a paid date, just let this new column we're going to introduce say paid. There's no need to waste our time calculating for those. When you do the overdue calculation and it is less than or equal to 0, then it is a current invoice that is not yet matured to chase after. For example, if the invoice, if the due date is still in the future, these are not the records we're interested in. We're interested in those records where the due date is behind. So if the due date is after today, it's still current. We are not interested. But if the due date is before today, then we want to know in which category it falls into. So the case statement will allow you to test several conditions. So we move on to the next one. If you do the calculations of days overdue and it falls between, see, we're introducing another very important parameter here, the between clause. If it is between 1 to 30, of course, we group it that way. If it is between 31 to 60, that way. So the between is a very important clause that can allow you to test a range in SQL Server, a range of numbers between that to that. So in here, we've specified all of the conditions. And if you do all this testing and it doesn't fall within any of this, if you see, we've covered virtually all of the ranges. We've covered 0. We've covered from 1 till 90. So if it exceeds 90, then it becomes 90 plus days. So if every of these is tested and it still doesn't work, of course, it's now going to be outside of 90. So it's automatically 90 plus days. So if we run this, and one more thing, so we still have our join on the basis of customer ID, and then we are ordering by days overdue. So we just want it to start from the highest days overdue down to the lowest. So if we now run this report again, this is where we started from. So if we, for the first record is for Apex Industry. I think we haven't put, maybe if we introduce the payment date, it will make more sense for those records where we have paid. So let's just introduce that. Due date, paid date. So let's introduce paid date, and then let us run this report again, just for more clarity around those records where we've paid. So if you see this is paid, we're not interested in those. Paid, we're not interested in those. Now, these are the due days overdue. If you see this one, 424, definitely 90 plus, because you've got to really check this to make sure it's correct. Let's look at another one. 84 is definitely between 61 to 90 days. That one there, 52 is definitely between 31 to 60 days. 8 is definitely between 1 to 30 days. And then look at the ones that are marked as current. If you look at the due date, they are beyond today. Today is February 17, 2026. And if you see this due date is still in the future. So the due date is still in minus. So they are current. These are not the people we are after. So the ones that have exceeded are the ones that the accounting department is interested in. So one more thing you could do is to actually wrap the whole of this query in another query and then try to filter off those records that you don't need. That will be an exercise for you. And if you want, you can create this query, respond in the comment section with this query. Let us see. So we want to filter off the ones that are paid, filter off the ones that are current. We want to see only the ones that fall into the buckets. If you comment with the query, I'm going to respond to it. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye, and please subscribe for more.